Welcome to Kubernetes SIG Apps for Monday, May 6th, 2019. Let me go ahead and share a link to the agenda in the chat here. Anybody who doesn't have it, we have the agenda here. And remember, we've got two topics for discussion today. And if anybody has anything else they want to add in, feel free to go ahead and put it under open discussion, and we'll go ahead and add it in later. We have no announcements or demos today, so we can jump right into the discussion topics. The first one is the examples repo discussion. SIG Apps owns the examples repo. What is that? GitHub.com/Kubernetes/examples. Those examples are mostly used in documentation. So you're going to find links to them and copies of that material throughout the docs that are part of the website. In fact, that's what originally got me to bring it up a few weeks ago, was I found outdated things in there, like using versions of PHP that are no longer supported, or not following the modern conventions because they were actually written a long time ago. So one of the things, and I think Ken, who's on, went off and chased down, is to try to figure out how should we go ahead and handle this repo? And I think the recommendation is that we deprecate and archive the repo, and before that happens, all of the docs are updated accordingly. The repo is, there's examples scattered all over the place within all of the repos, depending on what's going on. So while it's an examples repo, it's just a subset of the examples, and it's not really maintained, and it's quite a bit dated. So it's probably better to just have the examples be updated in their current locations and then work to maintain them there rather than this repo. What does everybody think about that? Anybody have any comments? It sounds like none. One of the things about this, though, is before we can deprecate the examples repo, we're going to need to update the examples as they are in docs, so that way they're up to date, and then strip out the links to those places. And so this is one of those places where we can actually call for contributors. It's a fairly simple thing to get into as far as updating the docs and updating their references and the YAML within them, those kinds of things. So that's one of the places we'll need to do before we do that. So we'll probably need a deprecation plan and get those updated. And so this is an area, if anybody knows new contributors who want to get into docs, this would be a great place for them to get started and to start poking around. And I'll bring up more of that as we put together a plan or figure out how we're going to handle this. All right. Then the next thing we have is an issue and PR triage discussion. And this was Ken's item. Ken?
So in SIG architecture, we were discussing what some of the other SIGs are doing to kind of do issue triage. And there are two kind of main methods. Like API machinery basically sits around in a SIG meeting or in a separate meeting and does issue triage as a group. And that's one way where you can kind of get like group mentorship to help people learn how to triage issues and route them and where things might be going wrong when they're assigned to SIG apps. Another method would be that we could have effectively people sign up for triage and then have like a shadower method. So have one of the owners or reviewers of SIG apps effectively shadow you on triage, and as you get issues, you could, CC them for support where you don't, if you don't know what's going on with it, or we can kind of point you in the right direction and help kind of get issues resolved that way. And my thought is that, like, if someone's looking to join in and contribute into the workloads controllers, one way, and it's the barrier entry is probably still kind of high, but one way that might work is by doing break fix. And that would be a good way to start getting commits into the repository so you can get membership for the Kubernetes project. Because right now it's kind of hard to get the requisite number of commits to Kubernetes via contributing just to SIG apps. Usually it's probably going to require something broader, but this might allow people to contribute a little bit more. Anybody have any thoughts on either method, or maybe should we open up a forum and discuss more, or is it a horrible idea?
So I like the idea of spending time in a meeting doing it. Part of that is there's a whole lot of issues out there, and if we have recorded meetings on this, it can teach people how to go in and triage them, so they have some examples of people who do it, showing them how they do it, so we can kind of scale horizontally. So I like the idea of that because it gives just an opportunity to do that where somebody can sit in and be quiet and just learn how to do it, and at least as part of it, so more people can come on board and try and help.
So I'm fine with that idea. If Janet's fine with it, and if Tomas and Majek and the others from Europe are fine with it, that sounds good. But the thing we should either do is decide to use part of this meeting to do it, or to set up a separate meeting. And if either way, we need to take the time difference between US and EU and where other contributors are into account, so that we can do it during a time frame where everyone can participate. And maybe we could even potentially oscillate between different meeting times to make that easier for people who aren't located in the United States.
I think that would be good. How about we start by dedicating part of this meeting to start triaging stuff, and if we can't fit it in, we can think about separate time, because we all already need to be here, right, at this time. So
it sounds good. I guess one way to look at it is, so in terms of if we need to dedicate more time, it's basically going to be like dedicate as much time as we want. Kubernetes is pretty much a never-ending stream of issues, right? So it's more like you look at the queue, you look at the stream, and you pick from the stream what's high priority. So I think we could probably get like at least a discussion of all the high priority stuff within a 30-minute time. And then the other thing is, when you compare the number of open issues and number of bugs for SIG apps relative to the rest of the project, we're actually doing pretty good. We're not like, there are other ways that you could look at how bugs are triaged and say that, compare them to our metrics and say that we're pretty not bad anyway. So I think that sounds super reasonable. We can just we'll update the agenda to spend some time on a weekly basis going over high priority issues.
Sounds good. Do we want to try starting to do that today, or is this something we should push off till next week or next time?
I would say I would do it next week, just because I don't want to. I'd rather at least pre-screen what we're going to triage as opposed to randomly pick, because that might get time-consuming, cumbersome, and not be super useful. But maybe we should also, in the meeting minutes, just have people add the issues that they think are important who are SIG members, and then we can go through them. But I might want to take a pass through what gets put in there. A lot of issues we get that pop up are, I guess the term is 8th layer issues. And not necessarily on the part of the user itself, but sometimes on the part of not great documentation on the project's behalf. But a lot of the times, you'll see an issue and it's well, that's intended behavior. So I'd rather not start doing those, because those are easy to triage. I'd rather try to pick issues that are a little bit more informative for other people to look at.
Okay, we'll add it to the next week agenda.
There was one other announcement. So Barney took a first cut. I don't know if anybody has taken a look at it yet. I've been super busy, so I haven't. I took a very brief first pass, but I haven't had a chance to review it, of the cron job GA plan. And that's opening enhancements. I linked it into the document. I think right now, Liggett and myself are assigned. It'd be good, I think, if Tomas, well, yeah, we should get more people to take a look. Tomas, Janet, Majek, maybe a couple of people at least. I think it's on the right track, but we need to think a little. It's somewhat high level, and maybe we need to dig a little deeper into the implementation as it goes forward.
All right, and I will get Maciej. I don't think he's here today.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so we just kind of breezed through our items today. That puts us into open discussion. Do we have anything that needs open discussion?
Someone new here. This is Jay. I'm somewhat new to the SIG Apps world, so
Hello.
I'm not really. Hey, how you guys doing? Or you folks doing? So yeah, it's nice to see you guys. I'm not sure what open discussion is. I was interested in learning more about where Helm's going with certain things, and getting involved in some of the community work in that area. But I'm not sure if this is dedicated to, if Helm is a subset of SIG Apps as far as where its community stuff is, or whether this is.
So yeah, I can try and answer some of that. Helm has actually broke off into its own CNCF project, and so there's a meeting for that on Thursdays now. So we don't tend to discuss that here.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Cool. So I'll drop into the chat here. I'll drop a link in real quick.
Okay, awesome.
So that just happened separately.
Cool. And what about the catalog stuff? Like, I haven't been in touch with the application stuff in a while. And just like all the app catalog and all that stuff, is that all still done here, or is that also?
So are you thinking about service catalog?
Yeah.
I'm not up on that right now. It is a separate SIG that does that, called SIG Service Catalog, and they handle those things. To be quite frank, and I'll drop a link into them into the chat here. I'm not sure where they're at because I have not been following as of late.
Yeah, okay. Cool.
All
right.
So that happens here. Here, we're going to work with things more like what's in the community, and we've been spending a lot of time lately on things like the workloads APIs. So things like cron job, deployments, daemon sets, a bunch of the core controllers, things of that nature. Things like there's an application CRD and controller that we're incubating in Kubernetes SIGs, some other things like that.
Gotcha. Awesome. Okay. Well, I appreciate all the help. Yeah.
Awesome. So welcome, and stick your nose into things and ask questions. People appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many SIGs now. I haven't been doing tons of upstream work in like a year and a half, and I just, now that getting back into it, I'm like, there's so many SIGs. It's just like, it's hard to know what's what. But this is helpful.
Yeah. Yes, there definitely are.
Yeah, I'll get involved. I'll start asking questions. I'll bother everybody. Don't worry.
Sounds great. And another place, if between meetings you've got things to use, is the mailing list. It's a great way for people to asynchronously jump on things.
Okay.
Sweet. All right. Does anybody have anything else? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and we'll give you about 40 minutes back. Have a wonderful week.